Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unleash Her. In case you don't know me, I'm Roberta, and I am your host for this podcast. So, for our first episode, I feel like I need to go into my story and how Unleash Her came about. So, growing up, I had a huge imagination. I was the youngest of four, so I spent a lot of time alone and I had a lot of time to just be in my imagination, if you will. And so I would pretend I was like a teacher or a singer. I would sing in front of my grandparents. They were like the best audience ever. And so, and an actress. I wanted to be an actress. Like I had all of these huge dreams. And then came the teenage years. I really struggled. I struggled from very low self-confidence and I felt I was just very lost. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was heavy. So I was overweight and of course being not having that self-confidence and the belief in myself. I just kept putting more weight on. And I got to be honest, I was lost. I went to a small school. I was bullied as being overweight because this was back in the 70s and 80s and people weren't as heavy then. So for me, um yeah, I kind of stood out a little bit. And when I was 16, I was really struggling. The weight kept coming on and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And one of my older sisters, she was a hairstylist. So, and she was really popular and, she was like prom queen and I just wanted to be just like her. So, she was a hairstylist. And so I decided to be a hairstylist as well. So, when I was 16 years old, I went to the vocational school to take cosmetology. And this was a 2-year program. And by the time I was 18, I was all set to go to work. So it was like the day after my high school graduation, you guys, I started working in a hair salon. And I was pretty lost still at that time, but at least I had this. And it really, started leading me on that path of then all I wanted was just to get married and have a family. And so I'll tell you, by the time that I was 23, I was married. And by the time I was 40, I was divorced. But I was blessed with two beautiful, beautiful children. Now, I struggled. I'm going to tell you, the single mom thing was not what I thought it was going to be. Um, it was tough. I embraced things at first and then all of my old thinking, everything just kept coming back. Like, the self-confidence was not there. I had no self-worth. I had no direction in my life. And now I had always been taught that you work hard for money, which a lot of people have that same belief. And so I was working very hard. I mean, I was taking care of a big house, working full time, keeping the house spotless for whatever reason. But I struggled and financially it got rough. I'm going to tell you. Things got really bad and I really just tried to ignore it. I tried to just not face that and I tried to go on vacations and make things look like things were okay. But I was lost and I really just thought if I could find someone to love me, that everything would be okay. what I didn't realize is that I just needed to learn to love myself. I didn't understand that. It took me a long time. And during this time, a few years after my divorce, I kept struggling. I kept gaining more weight, and I even, tried to numb this pain that I felt with alcohol. I spent a lot of time alone, and so, but out in public, I made it look like everything was just fine, and my health kept declining. Things got really bad. And because of my unhealthy habits, I developed this very large fibroid tumor. And I was in a very bad abusive relationship. And at the time, I was too embarrassed to tell anyone. I just wanted to get out, just get out of it and move on. Well, luckily, at this time, I sold my house. And I was an empty nester, so both of my kids were in college and trying to move on with their lives, and me as well as their mom. I wanted a fresh start, and so I found this beautiful apartment overlooking the river. And God, that was a God thing. I'm going to tell you that saved me. But I moved into this apartment thinking I would just be here for a year. And I was going to work on me. I started doing some different things. I found some friends at the gym and we started having a lot of fun. And they invited me to do some amazing things. And we went to the gym and we went bike riding and kayaking, and things were really, really looking up. I actually took on a role as a hair extension educator, and I began traveling across the country teaching hair extension classes. So this was like the new start. This was the new me. My health was getting better. And so, yeah, things were looking really good. Okay. And I was in the apartment for about a month, and I was in California. And I had received this call that I had no idea at the time, but it would change my life forever. This was on September 9th of 2018. And my daughter had been in a horrible accident and was hit by a car while crossing the street in a crosswalk. She was 22 at the time, and she had been living, she was going to college. So she was living near campus with a friend of hers. And I had to fly back home having no idea what I was going to be facing. And so I went to the hospital, and it was rough. You know, she had a traumatic brain injury and other invisible injuries. I didn't understand this at the time. It took me a while. And this was in and out of hospitals for 2 weeks, three different hospitals. I fought. I was just fighting. I didn't know what questions to ask. I was alone. I I'll tell you what, it took a toll on me. And my daughter had to move back in with me, which luckily the apartment that I found was a 2-bedroom apartment. So I will tell you, there was not a bed in there. That was my storage space. Um, so little by little, I got a bed in there for her to sleep on and moved the boxes around. And now I've got rid of everything, I want you to know. So why do we carry all this stuff around? Oh my gosh, that's another subject, okay? But I was pissed off. I was so mad. I just wanted my old life back. Like things had just started to look up. I had just began to make some changes in my life. I had to give up, traveling and teaching hair extension classes, and I was pissed. Well, there was a time, it had been about a year and a half, close to 2 years after her accident, after struggling and struggling. And I did not understand her injuries. And I had been in a support group, though, for caregivers for TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. This woke me up. I started to understand what she was going through because I could hear from others that other people were going through the same thing. I mean, it was depression. She went through anxiety and PTSD and all of these things that you couldn't see. Like she looked like she was okay. And as a matter of fact, people kept saying, she looks fine. I mean, she should be able to move on with her life and go on. And she did finish college through disability services and got her degree with health education. And so it looked like things were moving on. And the more that time went on, I started doing research because I knew there had to be something. There had to be something, some way that I could help her. And everything, as we know, begins with nutrition. So I began changing her nutrition. Now, she was vegetarian before, so she was already on a plant-based diet. But after her accident, she turned to like bad habits. I mean, really, all she wanted was like pizza and milkshakes for a while. So, of course, I just kind of went along with that because that was easy. And then there was a time that nothing, the things that I tried maybe were helping a little bit, but not a lot. And I spent all of my money on her recovery because we did holistic treatments, alternative treatments, everything we could get our hands on, which costs money. It is money out of your pocket. It's not like going and being on taking a prescription and taking a pill. That wasn't the answer. I knew it. And after all of this, there was one day that, well, this was in 2020. Um, my job had been taken away. The one thing that I had as a hairstylist, our jobs had been furloughed, and I thought I was going to lose it. I hit rock bottom. I remember I took a walk down to the river and I just was like, this is it. All right, God. I begged. I begged God for help. And I knew that I needed these prayers to be answered. I had my parents, thank God. My parents in their 80s, and they're amazing, amazing people. And they would always be there for me. But I didn't want to ask for help. I wanted to do it on my own, wanted to be strong. And sometimes you need to understand that you can't do it on your own. Sometimes it is okay to ask for help. The more research that I started doing at that time led me on a different path. And the following year, I decided I wanted a fresh start. Again, let's try it again. Fresh start. So I was baptized and things started coming into my life. I remember watching The Secret. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but this has been one of my favorite movies or documentaries. And there was this old man in there, Bob Proctor. If you've seen The Secret, you know exactly what I mean. But he just had something about him. And interestingly enough, in about April of 2021, I was on Facebook, and of course, what popped up? Something about Bob Proctor and some program that he had. There was like this week of training that was free. It was this virtual training that I decided, okay, I'm going to give it a try. So I jumped on and I started listening, and I was blown away by the things that I was hearing. I had never heard this before. This was a new way of thinking and a new way of doing things that I had never experienced in my life. And so so Bob is a mentor for so many people. And so someone reached out to me and we had a little chat, and I didn't realize, but he has this different programs that he offered. And so I knew this is what I needed. I knew it, but I didn't have any money to spend on it. It was a year-long mentorship program that I was invited to join. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Like, I know this is what I need, and I asked for it, and here it is. So I decided I'm all in. I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put it on my credit card, and I'm going to figure it out. I have no other options at the time. Nothing else was changing. And once I got into his energy, once I got into Bob's program, I started learning how to meditate and being still and being quiet and really listening to God. And so I was I was doing this method of meditation. It's called candle flame, where you just light a candle and you stare at the flame. And I just kept staring at the flame. And I had my intuition, God speaking to me, said, "You need to write a book." And I was like, "What?" That's crazy. I'm a hairstylist. I didn't go to college. So, yeah, I love to read. I'm not a great writer. Like, what is this? And so I just kind of sat on it for a while, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have been journaling ever since my children were born." So I had been journaling for 20 some years. I had all of this down on paper. And the biggest thing was that I knew, because of what my daughter had been through, that I had to share my story and that I had to help others. I knew it. And because they kept saying, "She looks fine," I was like, "Oh my God, that's the name of the book." And it just came, and everything kept coming to me. And, I thought, how am I going to do this? Like, I have some ideas and this and that, but I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody that's written a book. So I started just asking around, and one of my dear friends that I used to work with in the hair industry said, "Oh my gosh, you need to meet one of my clients." So she's actually an editor for this publishing company. So I was like, all right, I'll talk to him. So we got on the phone and we had a chat, and I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing that I attracted these people into my life, because that wouldn't have happened because I had been studying the law of attraction. And so I just it was happening, and I didn't even really realize it at the time. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write a book. And one thing led to another. We had many meetings, many conversations, and I had read several books about traumatic brain injuries, and I had never seen one from the patient and caregiver. And I thought this would be so beautiful if you could hear my side of the story and my daughter's, because we weren't understanding each other. Um, and my daughter agreed to do it. And so together we wrote a book, and it's called She Looks Fine. And we released that book on September 9th of 22. So that was 4 years after her accident. And boy, things had really begun to change then. She was healing, still struggling in some ways, but she was doing better. And our lives began to change. We both ended up in Miami at the time because I was there for an event. Our book was being released. She was there for a music video, which we'll talk more about here in a little bit. And so I knew that everything at this time, using the universal laws and the law of attraction, but the law of vibration is the primary law. So the vibration, it's the way that you are feeling. Because I can attract things into my life, but then taking things to the next step would take a little bit more. So we started doing book signings. And at one of the bookstores here, we started having our books being sold at several bookstores here in the city. But at one of the book signings afterward, somebody had reached out from one of the universities here and asked us to speak at one of their events. So my daughter and I both went to speak at this event, and we were keynote speakers. And I'm going to tell you, we we were paid more to speak in 1 hour as a keynote speaker than it would take me to earn in about a week or two at the salon. So this was huge. This was really big. Then I could see potential. Then I was like, whoa, like if that's possible, what else is possible? I, w- I want to do some more speaking. And so in March of 2023, I was a keynote speaker for the O'Leary publishing company, for the publisher for my book. I was a keynote speaker there, and I'm going to tell you what, that was um, one of the biggest, I don't want to say challenges, but um, one of the biggest things that I've ever done. And I can't believe I did it. And I did. And I made it through. I made it through the speech. And I have to tell you one more thing. I took, these videos from that speech, from that keynote speaking, and one of those videos went viral. So now I have like 6,000 followers on Facebook. Okay. In like, in a snap. So I couldn't believe the things that were happening. So then I was like, all right, I have got to, I need to be on stage again. I want to try this again because the more I do this, the better I'm going to get. I know it. And I was invited to go to New York City to be a speaker at this women's event. And it was so scary. I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew I had to do it. And I went not knowing a soul, and it was beautiful. It was exactly what I needed in my life. A few months later, I was going to an event in Toronto, and I reached out to my mentor, Kathleen Cameron, who was hosting the event, and I said, "Hey, I would love to do a guided meditation at your event." And she was like, "Okay, sure," which kind of like surprised me because then I was like, "Oh my gosh, what did I just do?" So this is the crazy thing. Through all of this, people are like, your voice is so calming. It's just, I don't know, like you should, do you do meditation? Or it's so soothing. So actually, I went into the recording studio and recorded a couple of meditations, and I loved it. Oh my goodness. I got to tell you, it was so exciting. And the second meditation that I did took one take. It was phenomenal. I'm just like, all right, I'm ready. Let's go. Now, don't get me wrong. Every time I went to do these things, I still had the nerves. I was nervous, but I was gaining my confidence. I was figuring out who I was and what I wanted. And when I look back on just the past 5 years. I made a huge transformation. I want to tell you something. After all of these years of fighting my weight, I finally said, I am done with getting on the scale. I am over it. Why am I looking at this stupid number? What does it doesn't define me. So I decided to forget the scale and just focus on feeling good. Feeling good. And that's what I did. And I feel amazing. I am healthy. I go to the gym, I do yoga, I do boxing, I go for walks. I do what makes me feel good. And it has totally changed. That is the thing I want you to understand is that when you start taking care of yourself first, because all of those years of just wanting to take care of others, like having children was the best thing in my life. I love my children more than anything, but I needed to put me first. I needed to take care of myself physically, mentally, emotionally, all of the above. And by hiring these mentors, life coaches in my life began to change. Then everyone kept saying, you have the voice for a podcast. And I was like, I don't want a podcast. That sounds like a lot of work. And it worked its way into my life. And I am so grateful and so thankful to be here today. And it is a full circle that I have made. And this podcast, Unleash Her, is for you. I am here to empower women to heal from within, like I did. I want you to create an extraordinary life. I want you to feel empowered. I want you to feel confident. And I want you to find true self-love. And I am here to help you. So, our next episode, I'm going to invite my daughter because I want her to tell you her story. And I am so excited. I am so blessed and I am so grateful to be here today. And I am so looking forward to speaking to all of you very, very soon. And as my grandma used to say, so long.